Okay.
And over to you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thanks, everyone. So the title of my little Pecha Kucha is Nature on the Board, Regenerative Technology for Hyperhuman Interbeing. Bit of a mouthful, but hopefully you'll get a few of the concepts in there. Go ahead, Tom. So yeah, I think most of us would agree technology is toxic in most of our lives. I think McLuhan warned us against too much human extension into technology and said every media extension of man is an amputation. A recent survey of school kids actually asked them whether they would rather lose their sense of smell or their smartphones, and they all chose to lose their sense of smell. So how toxic is that? And then you see like a lot of people spending more time on their avatars than on themselves and investing in their own health. Talking about toxicity of technology and how do we flip that on its head? So I think we'd all agree that we want to avoid fanning the flames of our nature disconnect, and a lot of technology is clearly doing that. So how can we imagine nature taking over the internet, or imagine nature influencing the technosphere? So I love this image of nature on the board, and I think the problem with nature on the board is it's always still through a human voice. And how do we avoid that? How do we really get nature on the board? How do we really get nature's understanding of what it is that humans are all about? And I think everyone's seen this image. The problem with humanism is that humanists think that we're top of the food chain. Post-humanists think that this human project's already finished. Transhumanists think that we should all be merging with computers and becoming cyborgs. And I'm really interested in hyperhumanism and this idea that we are absolutely in this nested ecology, and we have a lot of responsibility considering the capacities that we have in terms of our imaginations and cognition. So I'm very interested in this idea of hyperhumanism, which is really like looking at how do we use technology to transform the human condition. I think transhumanism, a lot of people think it's inevitable. I really think there's a massive backlash against it. But transhumanism requires us to become dependent on technology, which subverts our ability to develop these skills for ourselves. And I think that hyperhumanism can be a catalyst for developing our own innate human abilities. And the image on the left there is this idea that we are our own laboratories, and we have all of these ways of enacting and getting these receptors to actually reward us based on the kind of activities that we do. So having this fundamental knowledge is critical. And I think that there's many ways that we can do this hyperhumanism. There's millions of ways of meditating. There's many ways of dancing. There's fasting. There's going into darkness. And I think if we can enhance our senses, then we can actually open ourselves up to having this connection with nature. I think this is a brilliant quote here. We imagine how it feels to be a character. Why can't we imagine how the land feels? And I think that that's a critical part of my work. How do we really connect with nature in these new ways? And this idea of Umwelt hacking. So if you haven't heard of Umwelt is your sensorial system that enables you to experience the world. And every species has a very different Umwelt. So we're all we're all inside the same world, but we're experiencing it in very different ways. For instance, a lobster's brain is located in its throat, its nervous system in its abdomen, its teeth in its stomach, and its kidneys in its head. It also hears using its legs and tastes with its feet. So very, very different sensorial interface with the world. So what would it be like to have these compound eyes? And we can actually use technology to give us these new ways of experiencing and new ways of seeing. And this is another term that I use here is context engineering. So we've done content engineering for years and years, where we're producing content to be consumed. But context engineering is all about changing the way we perceive as the new content. And we can change the way we perceive in all sorts of different ways, whether it's visually or through audio. We can change the way we hear the world, for instance. And, I've worn this device. It's very clunky. It's called FlyViz 360. It takes a street view input and squashes that into 180 degrees. So you're literally seeing in 360 within about 15 minutes. And I walked around for a week wearing this thing, and suddenly you're an owl, right? You've got this 360 vision, or this device here, which is called a chi machine, where you put your ankles in these slots here, and it sways your body from side to side, and you can change the speed of this device, but it actually turns you into a snake, right? Suddenly you're in the body of a snake and you're having this embodied experience of being a snake. Or these devices here, which are very much low tech, no tech in fact. This is all analog. Wind whiskers, for instance, where we're able to experience what it's like to be a tree and have these extensions and these additional branches. Or these tactile devices that enable us to experience what it's like to be an octopus, to have extra limbs. And I think this sort of umwelt hacking, well, this is a project that I'm working on with a colleague, and we can send out these packs to you where you can actually try these devices for yourself. And I'd love to do this in one of our nature settings when we get a chance. So I think that what's really interesting about technology, we're starting to see machine learning decoding language, not just animal language, but also mycelium language, where we're seeing that there's 15 to 50 words being measured through electrical activity with the mycelium. And we all know about mushroom suits, where you're actually able to decompose and go back to nature through a mushroom suit. Or my friend here, Jay Cousins, I want to be eaten by a mushroom house that I have grown, and I want to be food, and I want to become habitat. So I think that's another form of interbeing that we really need to be on top of. And some of a recent search that I've done on machine learning and interbeing have brought up many projects looking at this problem of getting nature on the board. So the Earth Species Project, check that out, earthspecies.org. That's working on all sorts of different species. Open Plant is looking at plant signaling and all the plant communications that go on. Project SETI is looking at sperm whale communication, and then dolphin communication as well down the bottom there. Another couple of great examples, the Earth Listening Project. And this project, this is quite old actually, discovered that infrasonic communication in elephants, they were communicating through infrasonics and realized that these low frequencies could be used to study and protect them. And also the Great Ape Dictionary Project. This project uses video footage and machine learning to document these gestures. And we're starting to discover this sort of sign language that's going on there. And I think also what's important to remember is that there's lots of different applications that enable us to actually take a photo of a plant and then actually discover what that plant is. And I think those sorts of ways of interfacing and getting technology to really learn about nature in situ, whether it's astronomy, where you're putting your phone to the sky and suddenly you're getting this practice and theory in the same space in a very embodied way. And then just to finish, this idea of biofeedback, another really interesting way of us really understanding our own nature and our own inner worlds, whether it's an aura ring where you're actually understanding how much deep REM sleep you're getting at night. But then you've got eco-feedback where you're measuring how much you're using in terms of electricity or gas. And what I'm interested in is combining these two so that we can actually create this eco-social feedback where we're actually able to really sense the bigger systems above us and understand how we as individuals can change our behavior in order to affect the bigger systems in this sort of eco-social feedback. So a nice one here where you're literally just seeing, your paper towel use, affecting the destruction of the rainforest, etc. And Tom and I are looking at this idea of context engineering as a service. So going into IKEA and actually looking at what effects their practices are having on the bigger context, both in terms of the environment, but also in terms of mental health of the people working for them. And another thing that we can all do is the Geeky app is worth checking out. That's an app that actually you take a barcode read of every item that's going in the shopping trolley. And if you can get your kids to actually be taking these photos and create a behavior around it, we can suddenly start to remove those ethically dubious products from the shelves based on awareness through technology. Or above here where we're actually growing a screen on the screensaver all the time. We're not using our devices to grow trees. And once those trees fully grow, you see a real tree planted. So it's using the virtual to create the actual. And if you want a bigger deep dive into what I've been talking about in this 8 minutes on this Pecha Kucha, I'll put the link in the chat for this talk, which is it's an hour-long deep dive into these questions. And yeah, Tom asked to leave some questions here. So these are the kind of things I'd love to discuss. I know we don't have a lot of time, but yeah, how we use technology to build our own nature connection. How are you using it? And how do you think we should get nature on the board? Thank you very much.
Wow, lots of hands of appreciation and claps, and I think you did your title full justice, Carl.